Come here, buddy boy. How you doing today? How you feeling? You feeling all right? It's all right. It's okay. Here, look up here. You're such a good boy. Yeah. He's such a good baby. Oh, scratch, scratch. When you want to go in to see mommy? You want to go in and see your mommy? Okay, let's go in and see your mommy. Howdy folks, welcome back to an update video. I wanted to update you on Ichabod first. Just showed you a clip of him out here in the garage workshop. Just taking a few moments ago. He's doing a lot better. But let me go into what happened and then I'll kind of segue into the situation, diagnoses and things like that. On Wednesday this past Wednesday would be, I don't know what date that was. My watch is dead anyway. Why am I looking at it? About 3:30 in the afternoon, I had already taken my shower and he was fine all day long because I was out here working on stuff. He was out here with me, taking naps on the floor. I had the AC on, the door closed, so he wasn't hot or anything. And then went inside and I was on the computer. I was answering some emails because I get about 1 billion of them usually. And so I was just kind of doing my thing, and he walks into the back room where I have my kind of home office, and he is acting completely out of sorts as far as his balance, his ability to orient himself, and essentially almost falling over. And a couple of times his feet just went right out from underneath him and he ended up on his side and he would scramble, get back up, and he was panting, like obviously very freaked out. I mean, the dog was like completely going like bonkers mentally, and I can understand why. I mean, he didn't know what was happening to him. So I immediately recognized that there was some sort of medical emergency, and I said, well, it was only 3:30 in the afternoon, so I looked online, and his vet is called Keystone Veterinary Hospital, which is about 10 minutes from here. It's not bad, especially with the 44th Avenue extension now. I just go over I-75, the overpass, and go kind of a back road way around to Route 64, State Road 64. Right across the road, there it is, right in that shopping center. So we went in there, so we got there probably around 4. And again, the website said they were open till 6. So walked into the place and I said, I don't have an appointment. We got kind of an emergency going on. The receptionist gets up, walks out. She goes, what's going on? And about that time, Ichabod's standing and his feet go right out from underneath him. Just boom. She goes, oh, wow. And I said, I need to see the vet. She goes, the vet's not here. And I'm like, the vet's not here? Why are you open? I didn't say that out loud, but because I was freaking out myself. Oh, she had to leave early. It was just a thing today. And I go, great. She goes, you can go down the road to the urgent care, which is like a mile down the road, a veterinary urgent care place. So that's what we did. I threw him back in the truck and went down the road. We went in there. I'm not going to say the name of the place. I'm not going to bash them or anything, but I tell you what, they're slow to respond. They had this tablet out in their front lobby. Check in here. It didn't work. So I wasted probably 5 minutes doing that while the dog is basically falling down on his side and can't stand up with balance issues. It took about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes before the vet even saw him because they were so wrapped up in their minds about getting this information into their stupid computer systems, which weren't working. So she ended up writing it down on a piece of paper anyway and then going back to, I guess, a PC in the back and getting the account going. I mean, oh, heaven forbid we don't have the information in the computer so we can bill you, or charge you. Heaven forbid. So that frustrated me a little bit. And, of course, the dog is really, like, unstable. So anyway, the vet comes in and she looks at him and says, well, he has got a vestibular issue, obviously. You can see the nystagmus of his eyes twitching to the left, I believe. And I could see it too. And he had a head tilt to the right. And so I'm like, well, what do you think about that? And she said, well, he's 13 years old, almost 13 and a half now. And there's a thing called old dog vestibular idiopathy or idiopathy. I'm not sure what the pronunciation of that would be in that tense, but the idiopathy of essentially unknown origin vestibular neuritis or something like that, and it's very common in older dogs and cats. It's unknown, that's why they have the name idiopathy or idiopathy, being it's an unknown causation. And so I said, well, what do we do about it? So she said, well, you know, we want to do all these x-rays and blood work and stuff, and it was about $1,700 worth. And I said, I don't really see the need for any x-rays, because she said it would take about an hour or more for a radiologist once they sent him out to read him. And he's not physically injured. I don't suspect any masses or anything that an x-ray could detect anyway. So I declined that, but I did do the blood work, and I wanted to see that because I felt that was important, because if there's some sort of an organic cause or causation, we want to know what that is or was. And his blood work came back okay. He has a couple of marginal hits as far as his liver values and stuff. Say it's atypical for a causation of this event, but, you know, pretty typical for somebody or a dog that age, basically. Kidney function was okay, blood sugar was okay, that sort of thing. So I said, well, we know it's not that. So she said, I'm going to go ahead and prescribe some meclizine, which I have some, actually. I have some from a few years ago. And so I said, well, I have some meclizine. I can get them started on that. So she gave me the dose regimen for it, and also gave us an antibiotic and said, in case he's got a middle ear infection or something, which could be the cause of it. And a handout. She printed out this handout, 3 or 4 pages, which I read right there while they had him in the back doing tests and stuff. It was very informative, and I'm like, well, you know, he really looks like he's got some sort of old dog vestibular problem. Vestibular neuritis or something like that, who knows? We got him packaged up basically and brought home, and he was just miserable. I mean, he was really suffering with this, which absolutely just made me crazy, because my nerves, as I've said before, are shot anyway. And so I tried to be as calm as possible so that wouldn't spill over to his behavior, but he was just all freaked out. So I gave him one of his gabapentins, a quarter of one, which I asked the vet. I said, hey, can I give him with the antibiotic and with the meclizine? Can I give him a quarter of his gabapentin, because that will calm him down? She goes, absolutely, no problem. There's no contraindication to that. So I did that. That helped him out a lot. And again, that was Wednesday, and we've been watching him since then. Now, today is Sunday, so it was basically Friday afternoon. I noticed that the nystagmus, whatever that's pronunciation, I don't even know, to be honest with you, had gone away. So his eyes looked normal. He still had a pretty significant head tilt to the right. Will be left to you on screen. And I said, well, you know, he's doing better, but he was still swaying all over the place. And going outside in particular into a different sight picture really threw him off. Like when the sun was out, it was really bright sun. His back end basically would sway. He's like fishtailing. It's kind of funny, actually, in a way. Now it is, at least. Goes outside and he's like fishtailing. His front legs are pretty stable, but he's fishtailing, you know, like he doesn't have traction. And but he does okay inside, even on the slippery tile floors. He's not falling down anymore. His legs are not going out from underneath him. And it could simply be a one-off that this happened, or it could be a sign of something else. We still can't rule out the fact that either has a brain tumor of some sort, or maybe even had a stroke. It's possible. And, you know, the compensatory mechanisms, the collateral circulation in the brain, things like that could be kicking in where he's improving regardless of the cause, even if it's something more serious like that. But most likely it is the old dog vestibular situation that I described before. And that's where we're at on him. So we're just monitoring and seeing what goes on. I'm going to wait a little bit longer, finish his antibiotic, and I'm not going to give him any more meclizine now, because he doesn't seem to be dizzy, especially without, you know, the absence of that eye twitching deal. His head tilt's a little bit better today than it was even yesterday. That may be a permanent fixture in his life, from what I've read. Dogs that have this often remain with a head tilt forever, and so we'll have to see about that. But it usually doesn't cause any long-term balance issues. He's just somewhat unstable on his feet. Cannot jump up on the bed. He's tried. He does not have the strength or he doesn't have the balance, he hits that bed and goes flying off. Can't jump up on the couch, which is much lower. He can't do that either. So I'm not sure if he's going to ever be able to do that again. And he's so damn stubborn, he doesn't want me to help him do anything. So I don't really know how we're going to deal with that. I may have to try to build him some sort of a step thing so he can get up on the bed. But I doubt he would use it because he's just stubborn. He's a stubborn dog. So I don't know. We're going to play that part by ear. We'll see if he gets to the point where he can still do that, because he definitely has some leg weakness. And I think that's because of the lack of communication, or the interference in the communication with his limbs, which of course the vestibular system is really almost entirely responsible for, with the hypothalamus and other parts of his brain. So basically we're in a holding pattern. I appreciate the comments and the community posts I put up on his situation. And we're just going to keep watching him, as I said. So we'll go ahead and segue into other things now. I want to give you an update on the Concourse 14 fork situation. Been some developments in that, which had some high drama. And also the CB750, which is over here. So let's get to the Concourse first, and then the CB, and then we'll close this one out. Okay. This is a replacement fork tube. Outer and the inner, the chrome bar part of it, because I did not want to leave the old one in with that bare spot that I sanded down. Even though it wasn't leaking, but I haven't ridden it, but just sitting for the last week or so, it has not leaked when I put it back together with the old chrome bar, which is right here, wrapped up in some cellophane or plastic wrap, whatever you want to call it. And what I wanted to show you was that these are not exactly the same. This is off of course, a 2012, because this is a 12, so a second generation Concourse. Now, the only replacement fork tube I could find on eBay that look halfway decent, actually any of them, are from the first gen, 2008, 2009. If I'd found a 2010 and up to, I think, 2016, I think it was, it'd be the second gen range, which this one is a member of. So the only thing I could find again was an 08, 09, which is what is on here right now, like I said. But they are not the same. They are mostly the same, but they are not. And the main difference lies in how the ABS sensor goes into the casting. So this is how the ABS sensor goes on 2012. It is a single 8mm M8 by 1.25 thread pitch. Has a counter bore in here, and it comes out the backside right there, and it's got a little kind of port, if you will, and that's where the sensor sticks out. So as far as the sensor protrusion goes, or the spacing, the air gap between the reluctor on the rotor and where the sensor lies, when you stick that sensor through here, so it's flush up against this back, edge where it clamps in, or front edge, as the case may be, it barely pokes through, maybe 20, 30 thou, if that. And so I used that as a guide to basically make that one work. This one, I'll zoom up closer for you, and I'll go ahead and take that sensor out while we're talking about this. Okay, you can see right off the bat that there's a hole here and a hole up here. They're both, or they were, M6s. That just fell out. I'll show you what that's for. That's kind of important for this. And when you pull this out, you can see that this is the original sensor with only one bolt. This is brass only for rigidity. There's no ground or anything that comes through this. There's nothing like that. This thing is only for like rigidity. All right. Now what I ended up having to do was I ended up having to put this on the milling machine and mill this out, as you can see. So it is set up where it'll accommodate the diameter of the back side of this, which has got these little wings on it, which kind of align it. And of course the business end of the sensor itself right there. All right. So I ended up, see if we can keep you over there. I ended up putting it on the milling machine. I'll show you how I fixtured that. I thought it came out pretty good, actually. The way this thing wanted to line up, there was no way I could go directly over this one M6 hole here, this one right here, and then bore this out with this thing being anywhere but way up here. So I essentially had to move this hole away from the center line of that and away from the other hole, the original hole rather, as much as I could. So I had to fixture this on the mill in a certain way. I got to bring you over there right now to show you. And what we'll do is we'll put this fork in. Let me back you out a little bit. I'll show you how I did this. I'll put this fork in to show you the general setup how I did this. Let me get some light on the subject. I still have it all clamped up. I have not torn everything down yet because I got finished up late yesterday and I was tired. But I will do that as soon as I finish filming this. So here is our mandrel that I made. It's, interestingly enough, made out of a piece of a fork tube that was laying in my scrap drawer. And I took this, because it has a hole in it already, I don't have to bore it out, with the intention of bolting it down to the mill table as you see, and faced, this part of it first so it would do that, and then flipped it around and turned this feature with a shoulder. And that diameter is the exact same one as the axle that goes through this end. And so what I ended up doing was just putting, keeping the cap bolts in, or putting the cap bolts in, the proper ones. And all you got to do is slip this over, and it will go down on here. It's a fairly snug fit, like this. And it sits on that shoulder. And when you tighten these clamping bolts down, this thing is rigid as shit. Now the other one, I should have filmed a little of this, but I was short on time yesterday. Let me get a better pointer. Okay, so the other one had obviously a hole with no counterbore in it, and it had a M6 here and an M6 there. The parts fish actually calls this a speed sensor front wheel, which I'm assuming the more later ones are the same name. So you can see this one is configured for 2 bolt holes instead of just the one like the newer ones have, at least in the Gen 2s. So that's why the original fork assembly on 0809 is set up that way. And I'm like, well, I need to move the M6 out this way, out this way, much as I can. And I need to then come over a certain distance that I use this to measure it, and then basically drill and bore this feature in that fork bottom. But to do that, I have to line this up on an axis, because if I put it like this, we're at an angle. Or if I put it like that, we're at an angle. And there really isn't any good way to do this except through T&A, trial and error. That's exactly what I did. I had chuck in with the edge finder, and all I did was edge find the y-axis this way. Didn't need the x at that point. And once I edge found it, I went over and made sure that I could go directly down on top of the existing hole. And I had to move this around about 3 or 4 times to get it really close. Then clamp this up to make it nice and rigid. And I had already measured this out, so I took the diameter of this hole, this counterbore here, and halved it, divided it by 2. And then the diameter of the M6 hole, and did the same thing, and then just took a pair of calipers and measured here. And that gives me the dimension center to center, which is 0.887 in imperial, so from here to here. So since I'm on the x-axis now, I can move directly over. And so I said, well, I first need to drill this hole out and re-tap it for M8, but as far that way as possible. And so I put a 6 mil end mill in and just kind of eyed it in. And I said, okay, that's the best I can do. So I ran a 6 mil down, and then the tap drill for an M8. And at that point, I said, okay, I'll just use the 0 function on the DRO and set that as my 0 so I'd come back to it. And then I turned my attention on this. So I essentially had to duplicate this on that one over there as much as I could. And that's what I did. The biggest end mill I have is a 16 mil. I really needed like almost a 19, actually closer to like an 18 mil, I think, end mill to plunge that. So I used a 16 mil end mill and then ended up using the boring head with a recent acquisition from somebody local, a solid carbide boring tool with a 1/2 inch shank that goes into the boring head perfectly. And wow, did that thing work great. It worked fantastic. So that brought me to my final dimension, whatever that was. I don't know. I think it was 710 thou. Here's the drawing I made, in case you're interested. Just a quick drawing on the back of a energy guy thing. This had it laying around. And so this just gave me my dimensions that I needed to work off of. And that's what I did. So once and this depth here is like 400 thou from this face down. I had to make some assumptions here. I had to make the assumption that the back side of this is the same as the 0809. In other words, where that sensor protrudes. And I believe that is the case, but I have no way to measure it because there's no reference that I can use for it. So that's how this all worked out, using this as the dimensions that I needed. I figured these were the same, which they appear to be, and also this, which holds the fender. That did all line up, no problem. But there was some other differences in the fork as far as the innards go. This one, I can kind of peel this one back a little bit and show you, in case you're doing this for any particular reason. This head, the cap part on a 2012, which of course that's what this is. This part is much smaller than on the 2008, 2009. It is a 17 mil nut, and this is also 17 mil between these flats. And also the shaft here is a little larger because I don't know what the thread is. Probably this is M10. It's probably an M12. But otherwise, the dimensions of this were exactly the same. So there's no way that there was no way that I was going to take this apart. Go up inside there and undo that cap bolt that goes up inside here and hold this entire, dampening rod and this dampening rod and that assembly. And there's no point. Because if this is all the same, who cares? And plus I chewed this one up by accident and I said, we're just going to use the tube, the inner tube that is, and the outer tube, and of course all the associated parts from the 0809, put it all back together. And once we get the machining done to put well, actually I had it all back together, and that's when I realized the damn thing wouldn't fit, and I took it all apart again. And then put it back together once we had the machining done on that particular spot over there, this one. So you can see I'm actually almost cleaned up on that hole with the relationship of moving this bolt out as far as I could, this M8, and essentially obliterating the M6 threads that were in there. There were a little bit remaining on the inside edge here because I moved it that way, of course, but good enough. And then when I tapped it, it took care of them. It came out pretty well. Now the hole that this thing goes through inside there, okay, this sensor goes through, was way offset from this counter bore. So I just measured what it was on the original one. Come on, what this diameter was here. And I used an 11 mil end mill to bring the inside part where this sensor goes through, okay, and have that in line concentricity wise with the counter bore that I just did. And this is the ending result when it goes in. Now the only problem with it is, although I believe that the inside where this thing pokes through is the same as it is on the other one, as I said before, the outside is not. So when you just stick this thing in, it goes up against the reluctor, and so it's hitting it right now. And that's where this comes into play. That just fell out when I took this apart. It is a 90 thou spacer, 90 thou exactly. And what that does is it brings us, I need to wipe this off, it's all full of fork oil now from that other one. But it brings us to a point where we are just, and I mean just, sticking through. And you can just barely see it. I will show you that. I think we can look down and see it maybe. Of course the fender's on now, dummy. When it sticks through like that, it is, I believe, and I'm not 100% sure of it, but I believe it is in the exact same spot for air gap as the original one. And that's why that's there. So yeah, this was interesting to say the least. And I don't have to worry about putting a spacer behind the whole thing. This is a fairly stout piece of plastic here. In other words, it's not going to wiggle or bounce around or anything. And with that spacer there, it ain't hitting the reluctor, so therefore the wheel can spin unimpeded and not tear up a sensor. And something I forgot to mention before, this chrome bar on this Gen 1 fork was absolutely mint. I mean pristine, not a mark on it. Now I'm fully aware that I probably could have gotten a, I don't know if I could have gotten one, but maybe gotten a ABS sensor from an 08 or an 09 and plugged that in, or it would have fit perfectly in there, and then figured out where it plugged into, which I don't know where it is. I'd have to take half the bike apart to find where that plug is. And then try that. But I was not sure at all whether or not in the second gen they changed the software firmware in the computer or change the computer itself. Because why would they change sensors? I mean, why is it different from the first gen to the second gen? Now, in the first gen Concourses, of course, a horse is a horse, of course, they were getting to the point where they were considering making it mandatory, apparently. In other words, not an optional feature, but in the first gen it was. I think up into 2010, the early 2010s, or at least maybe even all through 2010, it was still optional for the ABS. I know that because the people that put sidecars on Concourses, Concourse 14s, do not use, to my knowledge, any second gen stuff that's past the early or the 2010s with the optional ABS. They do not want the ABS because then they got to figure out how to put the reluctor, and they have to figure out how to put a sensor, otherwise it's going to start throwing a code. And so that's why they tend to migrate toward the earlier ones to do a sidecar on a Concourse 14. I could have tried that, but I like, how much is a sensor and all the work to get in there and unplug this. I wanted to unplug it to bring it over to the mill to do this modification so I could just stick it in and go, nope, 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 yep. And then, but I couldn't do that either. I had to do it all from measurement and guessing, pretty much. But that hole where that sensor sticks through is exactly lined up with the slots in the reluctor, exactly. So I'm happy with that it did do that. I have not tried this out yet. After I shoot these clips, I am going to take it off the lift and run it up down the road, make sure there's no problem with the ABS. And if there is not, then putting this one to bed. And I got a couple other ideas of things I want to do to it electrically to improve a few things, the accessory stuff. That's nothing I'll film, of course, but as far as all the fork shit goes, I think we are finally done with it. So that's the update on that. And I'll show you what's going on with the CB750. Okay, when the time comes, I will not be showing you the clips. In other words, after I did all the machining work on the carbs that were past tense on here, because it's absolutely pointless, because none of that machining work helped anything. Ran like crap still. Well, okay, I'll give you a little taste of it. And so I gave up. And here's that pile of junk over here. So there's the original carbs, the original rack, the original everything. So where did I get this one? Well, actually, I manufactured this. I have a foundry. And
that's bullshit.
I got these off eBay. Now, the interesting part or story behind these is that they have a very weird number stamped on them. Something I've never seen before. And I think I can show you because you can see it right where it's supposed to be on the top of the intake side of the carb body. These are 058As. 058A is an alpha. Now, if you look in any carb reference for CB750 anywhere on the planet, basically, that number does not show up. On CB750, CB400, CB500, CB whatever, you know, CB McCall.
Breaker 19, this here's a rubber duck.
They do not show up. It does not show up. So talked to the seller on eBay, and they were pretty reasonably priced, and he even put that in his description. He goes, hey, look, these are listed as 058As. And he admitted that he did his own research and consulted with some CB750 people that he knows, and they can't figure it out either. So we do not know why it's stamped that way. His hypothesis was that somebody re-stamped them, and they did a botched job, but no way. No way. That is an original Honda stamping. There's no question about it. My guess is they're Euro spec or something, because otherwise they're exactly the same as that pile of junk over there. The bore diameter is the same. I did the overall length of the carbs. It's within like 10 thousandths. I mean, these are the same. The slide diameters are the same. Everything is the same. Right now, I do have it running pretty well, but I can't show it to you right now because we have ignition problems, which you probably already figured out if you watch the other abomination videos on this thing. And we're going to be replacing the coils. The coils test fine, believe it or not, but the HT leads are, well, they're stiffer than you-know-who on a good night. And not me. And they're also breaking. But when you test the coil secondary resistance, although it's not listed anywhere, it comes up to be a reasonable amount. Without the resistor caps on, it's about 15K, which is where you'd want it. And the primary tests pretty good too. It's around maybe 6 ohms. It's a little high, but it's supposed to be like 4.5 to 5. So I said, well, the coils technically test good. It's a shame that you cannot replace the HT lead. They're molded in there. So I had to pull the trigger on ordering a set from Z1 Enterprises that are designed for this location, and we have to do that. I got it running pretty well. I don't have any clips of it, but those are the ones that you're going to see when we get back to this. Because again, there is no point in putting the clips from the other carbs up because it ran so crappy. But it runs pretty good right now with the jetting. I got 110s in the mains and actually 42s in the slows. They're actually for the 34 millimeter CB750 carburetors. The jets are a little longer, same 3.5 millimeter thread, and the same bleed end of the slow jet pilot jet that goes up inside there, and they fit fine. So I tried those and it works pretty damn good, and it's close. It's real close. I am hoping, but not confident in the least, that the ignition situation will make it run better, because it had great spark, but that's great spark testing it in open air with an air gap. And sometimes when you have these coils, increased resistance along perhaps the HT leads. And I tested this stuff as far as the voltage getting up there, but not the current. So these things could be failing under load, and I also have 4 brand new spark plugs for it. So that's where we're at. Once I get those parts in, we'll put it back up on the lift. I'll fire the camera up here and we'll start replacing those, get it running again, and show you, which I'm hopeful I should say, will be the final configuration of it. You know, I admit that I kind of screwed up a couple of things. Oh, by the way, yeah, one thing I didn't screw up was I have the charging system working. It was not working before. Charging system, so I got gas. As far as the stator goes down in there, it's about 6 ohms on all 3 legs and no shorts to ground. Little high, but not terrible. The field coil resistance was good as well. Testing it down there. Then I tested it up here and it was also good. I cleaned this plug out. This plug is okay. But the one from the rectum fryer over here was, well, let me just show you the plug. Yeah, these guys are not going to cut the mustard. A little bit on the melted side. And there's your problem, lady. Now, this is a ground wire, but it was to the original flasher can, which has been changed. So that has nothing to do with it, but the main ground for all this stuff is behind here. That was okay. I checked that with a meter to another ground source, actually back to the battery. And it had like a 0.5 ohm as far as the resistance goes, which is absolutely acceptable on that circuit. But the other thing I did was I took the regulator out and I readjusted it. I had to crank it up a little bit. And once I did that, the charging system decided to come to life, and we are banging out in the high 13s at about 3,000 RPM, and that's good enough. Now the manual says 14 to 15 volts, but that's fine. This is going to be good enough. And when you turn the headlight on, it's still in the 13, so I think we're going to be okay on that. I may fiddle with it one more time after we get this thing done and take it for a few rides and see if the local just up and down the road, there ain't no tag, and then take it up and see if the battery is holding up. If not, then we can always adjust that. But it is charging, I am happy to say. And so that is another thing off the list. Yeah. And I'll put that sprocket cover back on. I want to do a full inspection on the sprocket and the chain and so forth. That's why it is not on now. Tie up all the wires and so forth. So there you go. You are updated. So stay tuned for the video number 3 on this, where we're just going to jump right into these carburetors and take those things and send them to Davy Jones's locker, deep six them, and then we'll take it from there. Where you going, bud? What you doing? What you doing? You going to hang out outside a little bit and sniff around? Yeah, he's still a little wobbly, but a lot better. Yeah, the cable laying there is Spectrum. We have some problems in the cable, so they're coming to bury this sucker. Actually, they'll bury a new one. This is a temporary cable that goes to the tap back there. I had them here this morning, and the gentleman did a fantastic job and also changed the modem out, so maybe when I upload, it's not going to take, I don't know, 5 years. But he is doing a lot better, and it makes me happy. I know we're not going to have them forever. I know that there's someday I'm going to have to deal with this in more of a serious manner. It's not serious, but more of a realistic manner, that he's just not going to last too much longer. But maybe, maybe not. We'll see if we can get past this, though. Right, buddy? Can we get past this? And then you can be happy again? Because I don't like it when you're not happy. Daddy gets very, very sad when you're not happy. I wash his face. He needs a bath too, but he hates those. I'm trying to give him a break. Okay, say goodbye to everybody. Say goodbye. Say bye-bye. I gotta go inside. I'm getting warm. So it's been a kind of a tough week for us with this, for me at least, because my nerves are shot, as I said many times before, and I just don't handle stuff like this as good as I used to. But we're going to keep on trucking. I could really take it a lot easier with an animal that, love, and a family member, if something happens like acutely. I don't mean like getting run over by a truck or something, because that'd be my fault, because I wasn't watching them and the dog wasn't where the dog was supposed to be. I'm talking about, if one day the dog is okay and the next day the dog can't get up, or a cat or whatever it is, and then you bring the dog into the vet or the emergency vet and it's like, well, he got cancer. And that happened to me once years ago with a German Shepherd that I had. And I could handle that a lot easier than watching him suffer. That was the main problem. Watching him suffer through this was really just tearing my heart out, because he didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. And yeah. So anyway, stick around. We'll have more shit coming up, but I wanted to give you an update on the dog, on these forks, CB750. And I got to get back to the Sabre forks because they're leaking again, that transmission fluid thing. Yep. How come it's always the right one? But this time I'm going to change out the bushings in that one. I can only get the guide bushings on the top of the fork. Remember, those are not inverted, those are uprights. You can get them right from the Honda parts, from Partzilla in my case. They just don't have the slide bushings. I don't think they're a problem anyway. And up top side, you got that narrow slide, guide bushing rather, that takes a lot of the force. I'm thinking that the bushing must be slightly worn, and we're getting some movement in there, and it's taking the seals out prematurely or causing a problem with the seals sealing. Plus, I'll polish the rods up, the chrome bars up, and then put it back together. I might actually spring for some 10W actual fork oil, not sure yet. I couldn't order it, they're out of stock in Partzilla, so I'll have to go to a local dealer and spend 18 bucks a quart, but it is what it is. Stick around, maybe I'll show some of that, maybe not, but just keep looking for videos on stuff I got. And again, thanks for people reaching out. It was only 3 comments, but it still meant a lot to me about and I got a couple emails too, I want to admit that people reached out and said, hope the dog's okay and so forth. I do appreciate it. So I guess that's it. And as always, don't just repair, restore. See you on next video. Thanks for watching.